Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Pitch Side podcast, and this is a special episode, of course, on Thursday to recap what happened in the UEFA Champions League over the last 2 days. Before we get to everything started, of course, rest in peace to one of the greatest legends that ever played football in Diego Armando Maradona, who passed away sadly yesterday at the age of 60, one of the greatest players ever, and his memories will live forever in the hearts and minds of everyone who watched him play. I certainly did watch him play, but I would absolutely love to have seen him, scintillate people with his magic and just wizardry on the ball. With that out of the way, of course, let's get into what happened on Wednesday and before that Tuesday in Group A. The champions of Europe, Bayern, who smashed 6 past Salzburg last time out, welcomed the Austrian outfit into the Allianz Arena, looking for a confirmation for their predictable qualification and a 15th successive Champions League victory. The job was not as easy as everybody expected, a modified side, as it was the case with most European big boys. Salzburg were threatening for most of the first half, but the likes of Junuzovic and Dominik Szoboszlai, one of the best young prospects in Europe at the moment, couldn't make up for it. Robert Lewandowski finally broke the deadlock at the 42nd minute, giving Bayern the threat to control the match. In the second half, Bayern ventured forward, more likely to them, as Koeman's strike was deflected into the net for a 2-0 lead inside 60 minutes. Before Leroy Sané make it 3 from a Kingsley Coman assist, of course. Salzburg scored a consolation goal later thanks to Berisha, but missed a couple more chances to make the scoreline even tighter. In the end, it was another day in the office for Bayern Munich, who will take the flight to Madrid to face Atletico next week in a big game. Speaking of Los Rojiblancos in Group A as well, it was another disappointing night for Simeone's boys as the Russian visitor made their defence an unpenetrable fortress. Atletico saw time that the ball hit the net was denied by VAR for a rightful offside on Koke on his 100th appearance in Europe. This result will certainly not sit well with a side that everyone was showering with praise just days ago after their win against Barcelona for their effectiveness and sharpness, particularly ahead of a reverse clash against Bayern Munich at home next week, in hope to get any sort of result that won't make the final trip to Salzburg on matchday 6 a nightmarish proposition. For the Russian side, surprisingly, they're still in the qualification race. They host the Austrian side, Salzburg, with a win against the Salzburg elevating them to 6 points and a potential second place, depending, of course, on what is going to happen at the Wanda Metropolitano. In Group B, Borussia Mönchengladbach just demolished Shakhtar Donetsk 4-0 in the most convoluted group, probably, of this season's Champions League. They entered this game on the back of a 6-0 demolition job against them in Kiev last time out, but also a devastating 4-3 loss to Bayer Leverkusen in the Bundesliga. And to be fair, if you didn't watch the first game, you would probably think this was a replay of that match in Kiev. The home side took advantage early from the penalty spot via Lars Stindl, followed by a header from Nico Alvede and an assist, of course, from Lars Stindl for the second goal inside half an hour. Game was done by then. Beautiful half scissors kick from Mbolo, albeit right in front of the goal really, but still the technique was brilliant to end the first half 3-0 up and manage the game from then onwards in the second half, adding a fourth from a direct free kick of Oscar Wendt. From there, Shakhtar tried to save face. They tried to make it less hurting of an aggregate scoreline over 2 games. 10-0 over 2 games still hurts really, but Jan Sommer made sure they won't score with a couple of brilliant saves in the last couple of minutes. Thus, Borussia Mönchengladbach get another 3 points, get closer to qualification in a group that, weirdly, they could have topped, really, when you look at how their games have shaped. They could have topped it easily with 12 points, but regardless, they will look to seal it for real when they host the Inter Milan next week. Speaking of the Nerazzurri, they looked out of their depth and very despondent against a Real Madrid side that was surprisingly lively, to be fair. I didn't think they would play like that. They managed to control the game from the beginning to the end to their liking, scoring from the penalty spot, drawn by Nacho, turned in by Hazard, only his third goal for the merengue side. Hopefully that will kickstart a better season for the Belgian international than the last one. Inter tried afterwards to get back into the game, but they were toothless. Another penalty incident turned to be their undoing. At half an hour mark, Vidal was sent off, rightfully for dissent, after demanding a penalty from Anthony Tyler, the referee. 10 men, 1-0 down. This was Real Madrid's game all day long. They passed the ball around, they created all sorts of triangles and squares between players you only expect to see at training ground, against a Conte side that failed to muster any kind of true effort. In the second half it was more of the same. Rodrigo came in from the bench, scored 35 seconds afterwards, halfway through the second half, though the goal was claimed as a Hakimi goal, but personally I would give it to Rodrigo. The rest of the game was really agonising to watch at points for Inter fans. Real Madrid toyed with them. They pressed them, they played high, they played low, all sorts of passes, but without adding a third goal for it at the very least. Next time out, Real travelled to Kiev, facing Shakhtar Donetsk, looking to hopefully get revenge of their first match loss at home, while Inter Milan have a much trickier trip to Mönchengladbach. I mean, technically, they're probably out of it. I don't really think so. They take on Borussia Mönchengladbach for one last chance maybe at keeping some sort of dignity, but it looks very likely that they will play Thursday football in the Europa League going forward. Moving on in Group C, Olympiacos hosted Manchester City, who, after a disappointing performance against Tottenham at the weekend, went to Piraeus looking for a better outing against the Greek side, and though they dominated the game by quite a margin in terms of creating chances, 20 shots on target and all, they were not hitting on all cylinders, which can be understandable considering they rested De Bruyne. However, one would think that they have too much quality to make it comfortable for them. Eventually it wasn't comfortable, as they would think. Foden's 37-minute goal for a beautiful backheel assist from Raheem Sterling stood alone as the mark for the away win for Guardiola's side, who had 12 points on top of the group, predictably, though they could have eased the game on themselves after Olympiacos had a late flurry in the final quarter of an hour. In the other game of that group, Marseille continued their unbelievable slump, once again failing to score, let alone gaining any points, succumbing to a much better Porto side who made sure of an emphatic qualification to the next round. Pretty much is done and dusted before hosting Man City for the next round to maybe snatch the spot at the top of the group, although that would require quite a lot of work. The Portuguese side were not quite at their best, to be fair. They allowed some chances for the French side, but they still did enough to get the job done. Marseille host Olympiacos next time out for one last chance at potentially playing Europa League football after a very hapless campaign so far. Bottom of the group, no points and no goals. In Group D, it was Liverpool hosting Atalanta, the PL champions, entered their first clash against Gianpiero Gasperini's side with a very modified lineup. Curtis Jones, Reece Williams, Nico Williams, also Konstantinos Tsimikas all getting the starting nod, and it showed on the pitch really. The Reds were not clicking, they were not coherent for most of the game, they found themselves on the back foot more often than not. In the second half it was as if Atalanta decided to take revenge for Leicester, figuratively of course, and they did it the same way. Liverpool hurt Leicester, which is on crosses, quick-fire double for Atalanta from Josip Ilicic, who I'm personally happy to see him back on the pitch and score goals. Robin Gosens capped off a very solid performance from Ladea against the Liverpool side that could easily find the excuse for himself by playing in mostly B team, but still, you don't have an excuse of putting such poor performance with no shots on target. You're supposed to have quality across all the board in your squad. No shots on target, an anomaly for Liverpool, unlike any other considering some of the names that they have up front. They still top the group though, but they have a lot to play for against Ajax. They cannot slip again next week. It is a crucial match to seal the deal and seal the qualification, hopefully, while Atalanta of course have an easy game at home against Midland. Speaking of Midland, in the other game in this group. It was one-sided predictably against the Minnows by Ajax, quickly dispatching of the Danish side in the first half and getting a huge boost from Liverpool's loss against Atalanta, turning out the group straight around as the qualification odds looked to be going down to the wire and to the last round. In Group E, an informed Chelsea side made the trip to France looking to seal their qualification with a slightly changed side from the Newcastle game in the weekend. Certainly had a strong 30 minutes to show for it, scoring thanks to a Hudson-Odoi goal via a beautiful assist from Mason Mount. Missed lots of chances, particularly from Timo Werner, who could have had at least a hat-trick probably for his name. The inefficiency from the blue outfit gave Rennes the opportunity to grow into the game and create a couple of dangerous chances, forcing some important saves from Edouard Mendy. The second half was pretty much the same story, Rennes getting a late equaliser just about time, but when they thought they got their point from the game, Olivier Giroud came in from the bench and scored a stoppage time winner to make sure of the all-important qualification with 2 games to go, guaranteeing less headaches for Lampard ahead of a weekend clash against Tottenham, followed by a trip to Sevilla in match day 5. In Russia, in the other game of this group, things didn't go down smoothly for last season's Europa League winners. Despite taking a very early lead thanks to Ivan Rakitic, they couldn't kill the game, and just like for Chelsea against Rennes, gave the home side a chance to enter the game. A score early in the second half, with Sevilla living on the edge for the rest of the game, although a point could have done them well really, but they needed to make sure of an emphatic statement. The save come from Munir Haddadi. Seriously, I mean, I need to ask a question, is the guy Spanish or Moroccan? Somebody tells me. I don't know his nationality really, I always think he's Moroccan. In the 95th minute, clinching the crucial win and the qualification before a head-to-head clash against Chelsea at home in the next match day to decide who is going to top the group. Moving on, in Group F, Lazio welcomed back Ciro Immobile into their Champions League squad. Understandably, he wanted to go back, scoring in that competition, and he did it in brilliant style for the opening goal. Marco Parolo added a second goal quickly afterwards, and despite Artem Dzyuba's consolation goal in the 25th minute, who could have gotten them something back from the game, they couldn't do much more than that, and eventually Lazio made it through from the spot with Immobile getting his brace in the game to one step closer to qualification before a very tasty battle against Borussia Dortmund next weekend. Speaking of the BVB 09, it seems like we cannot talk about them really about mentioning Erling Braut Haaland yet again was there to open the score for them before Jadon Sancho made it 2-0 from a well-taken free kick that might shut down the critics who have been breathing down his neck figuratively this season after his whole saga of transfer to Manchester United. Haaland was back again to make it 3 and take the club's tally to 9 points ahead of the mentioned home clash against Lazio, which should be a battle of top-class strikers between him and Immobile. Moving on, in Group G in Kiev, Dinamo hosted Barcelona in a very cold weather, with a very changed lineup for Koeman's side, resting the likes of Messi and De Jong, plus all the other injuries they had. Braithwaite was trusted to lead the line, with Griezmann starting on the bench, Oscar Mingueza getting a debut as well for Barcelona, and even with the home side missing 13 players due to various reasons, they still managed to make life hard for the Catalan side in the first half. However, all things come to an end eventually, and Sergiño Dest found the key to unlock Dinamo's defence, and from there it was Barcelona's game all around, with Martin Braithwaite getting a Champions League historic brace, including a goal from a penalty spot, and Antoine Griezmann scoring a stoppage time 4th goal to secure Barcelona's keeping a perfect mark and going through to the round of 16, of course, alongside Juventus. And hopefully for Griezmann this goal would be a good start for his season, maybe a kickstart that he needed. In the other game of the group, it was much harder than it had any right to be or look for Juventus, with the Hungarian champions taking a stunning lead in Turin inside the first quarter of an hour, only for CR7 to deny them that lead, bring Juventus back into the game with a beautiful left footer inside half an hour. But even so, Juventus struggled to finish the job in the 90 minutes allowed, but they did so after 2 minutes from that time, with Alvaro Morata finishing a beautiful team play to guarantee Juventus a good but a hard-earned home win against Ferencváros, but before another home fixture against Dynamo Kiev, and of course the later trip the Camp Nou in a very anticipated clash between CR7 and Lionel Messi on the final match day round. To round things off, Group H, of course, Man United defeated Istanbul Başakşehir 4-1 at Old Trafford. It was a much needed and a very comfortable win for United, leading 3-0 by half-time. Great performances from the likes of Marcus Rashford and Bruno Fernandes, who opened the scoreline with a beautiful strike inside 7 minutes, capitalising on a goalkeeper parry for the second goal, and then, of course, in a very classy move, I like to see moves like that on the pitch, he left the penalty for Marcus Rashford, who drawn the penalty, of course, to make it 3 inside 35 minutes. But Istanbul Başakşehir managed way more danger somehow than what they had in Turkey. Overall, a late flurry in the first half and having a great performance in the second half, scoring a beautiful free kick turned in by Turuk and getting the better of the home side throughout the half. But eventually, United's quality sealed the deal in the end with Daniel James in the 94th minute to win the game via a decent margin. The next one is going to be very important as the host PSG looking to guarantee the top spot of the group and their spot in the round of 16, and in some way really subverting the expectations around them after a very shaky start to the season. To round it off, in Paris, PSG had a very rough night against Nagelsmann boys in RB Leipzig, and quite frankly, they were second best to a Leipzig side that just about did everything in football aside from scoring, putting one heck of a defensive performance, with Konate and Upamecano managing to lock away PSG's potent attack for most of the game. However, the only time one of these two centre-backs made a true mistake, it resulted in a giveaway that led to a penalty that should have not been a penalty, just to be clear about that. Neymar walked his way into taking it as usual, scored, and that was eventually the one difference for a hard-earned, but not really much of a deserved win for PSG, who take the trip to Manchester in the next midweek, hoping to clinch any result that gets them through the finish line or keeps them close in the run. The group is still very open, as it looks to be the case with most of the groups in this Champions League campaign. That was all for the Champions League recap. Remember to like the video, share it, most importantly subscribe to the channel. You can follow me on Twitter at King of the Pitch, on Twitter at SOLSKJAER, and on Instagram at King of the Pitch. You will see these usernames available on screen, and of course we're available to listen on Spotify as well. Again, before we finish the video, rest in peace Maradona, one of the greatest legend who ever played football. I was your host, the HOD from the PSP, and until the next episode of the Pitchside Podcast, goodbye.